Welcome to our deep dives into the power of now.
Oh, yeah.
It's the New York Times bestseller by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
And, it helps millions of people
Yeah.
tap into like this deeper sense of peace.
Yeah.
But to be honest, it could be a bit dense at times.
Oh, for sure.
So we're here to kind of help unlock that wisdom.
Yeah. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
How Tolle's own journey with depression kind of led him to this profound spiritual awakening at just 29 years old.
Wow.
And, that experience became the foundation for all of his teachings.
That's amazing.
Oh.
And it really makes you think, have you ever felt like your own mind is what's holding you back from real happiness? Like you're constantly battling thoughts that just won't quiet down?
Yeah.
That's exactly what Tolle tackles head on with this core message. You are not your mind.
Yeah, it's kind of a radical idea when you think about it.
Yeah.
He uses the story of a beggar sitting on a treasure chest to illustrate the point.
Oh, interesting.
So the beggar represents our minds always searching for something outside of ourselves to feel complete, while that treasure chest symbolizes the peace and joy that already exists within us.
So instead of chasing happiness, we should be looking inward.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to separate ourselves from that constant mental chatter?
Well, Tolle argues that the first step is recognizing that our thoughts and emotions are not who we truly are.
Okay.
It's like watching clouds passing by. You observe them without getting caught up in them.
Okay, that makes sense. But it sounds easier said than done.
Yeah.
Our thoughts can be pretty loud and persistent, right?
Absolutely. And that's where the concept of the pain body comes in.
Okay.
Tolle describes it as this reservoir of negative energy that we carry from our past experiences. It's like this invisible weight that drags us down and keeps us stuck in these cycles of suffering.
So it's not just mental chatter. It's like emotional baggage that we're physically carrying around.
Exactly.
Wow.
Think about those times when you react disproportionately to a situation. Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic and suddenly you're filled with rage.
Oh, yeah?
Or a small setback at work sends you spiraling into self-doubt. That's your pain body hijacking your emotions and your behavior.
That's a little unsettling, to be honest. So how do we escape this pain body's grip?
Right.
It's not like we could just tell it to go away.
Yeah, it's more about becoming aware of it.
Okay.
Instead of fighting it, you observe it without judgment. You recognize that the pain body is not you. It's simply a collection of old emotions that are trying to resurface.
So by bringing awareness to it, we can start to detach from its power.
Precisely.
Okay.
And as you detach, you create space for something else to emerge. A sense of presence, of being fully grounded in the now.
Presence. That seems to be a recurring theme in the power of now. But how do we cultivate that presence when we're so used to dwelling on the past or worrying about the future?
Right. Well, Tolle argues that both the past and the future are illusions created by our minds.
Yeah.
The only reality is this present moment. He even says that the key to the spiritual dimension is found in the now. And many traditions like Zen and Sufism echo that idea.
Okay, that's pretty deep. So if we're always caught up in our thoughts about the past or the future, we're essentially missing out on life itself.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Right.
When you're lost in worry about tomorrow's presentation, you're not fully experiencing your dinner with loved ones tonight. And when you replay a painful memory, you're robbing yourself of the joy that's available in this moment.
That really resonates with me.
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of getting stuck in those mental loops. It makes you wonder, how much are we missing out on?
Right.
By not being fully present?
A lot, potentially. And it's not just about missing out on the good stuff. When we're not present, we're also more susceptible to the pain body's influence. We react impulsively, we make poor decisions, and we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves and others.
So presence isn't just about savoring the good moments. It's also about navigating the challenging ones with more clarity and awareness.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this brings us to the topic of relationships.
Okay.
Where the power of presence can truly transform our interactions.
Now, that's something I'm really curious about. I know Tolle has some pretty unconventional views on love and relationships. What exactly does he say?
Well, Tolle suggests that most of our relationships are actually quite dysfunctional.
Oh, wow.
He believes that true love cannot flourish until we access a higher state of consciousness, until we step out of ego-driven patterns.
So he's not exactly painting a rosy picture of love as we typically experience it. Is he saying that all relationships are doomed to fail unless we become enlightened beings?
Not necessarily. He's more focused on the addictive nature of love-hate relationships, which stem from our ego's desperate need for wholeness. We cling to others in an attempt to fill a void within ourselves, and this inevitably leads to suffering.
You know, I've definitely seen that pattern play out
Yeah.
in my own life and in the lives of people around me.
It's a common human experience.
Yeah.
And it's why Tolle emphasizes the importance of cultivating presence within relationships.
Okay.
When you're present with your partner, you can see them clearly without the filters of your own needs and projections.
So it's about bringing that same awareness we talked about earlier, observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment into our interactions with others.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where true intimacy can begin to blossom.
Wow.
It's about connecting with the essence of the other person, rather than getting caught up in their superficial qualities or the roles they play in your life.
This is all very thought-provoking.
Yeah.
It seems like Tolle is challenging us to re-examine our entire approach to love and relationships.
He is. And he even takes it a step further by suggesting that true love is not selective.
Okay.
It doesn't discriminate between romantic partners, friends, family, or even strangers. It's an all-encompassing love that flows from a state of being rather than from the ego's limited perspective.
So it's about tapping into a deeper well of love that's not dependent on specific people or conditions. That's a beautiful concept.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, it's a bit mind-blowing.
It is. And it leads us to another key concept from The Power of Now.
Okay.
The idea that true peace transcends both happiness and unhappiness.
So it's not about chasing happiness.
Right.
But rather about finding a deeper sense of peace that's not dependent on external circumstances.
Exactly.
I'm starting to sense a common thread here.
Absolutely. And that thread is presence.
Okay.
Whether we're talking about mastering our minds, healing our pain bodies, transforming our relationships, or finding lasting peace, it all comes back to the power of the present moment.
That's a powerful insight. So in a way, this entire deep dive is really about exploring different facets of presence and how it can revolutionize every aspect of our lives.
You could say that. And it's only the beginning of our journey into the power of now. There's still so much to uncover.
Well, I'm ready to keep diving in.
Yeah, me too. You know what's so powerful about Tolle's approach? He doesn't just present these concepts as abstract philosophies.
Right.
He gives tangible tools and practices to help integrate them into our daily lives.
So it's not just about understanding these ideas intellectually, but actually embodying them.
Right.
That's honestly where I struggle. I can read something and be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then actually putting it into practice is a whole other challenge.
That's where the real transformation happens, though.
Yeah.
Tolle calls this conscious living, and it involves cultivating presence in every aspect of our lives.
So how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
What are some of the specific practices that he recommends?
Okay, so one of the most fundamental practices is what he calls watching the thinker.
Okay.
And it's about becoming aware of that constant stream of thoughts running through our minds, almost like a background noise.
Right.
That we've become so accustomed to that we don't even notice it anymore.
Oh, I definitely have that background noise. It's usually a mix of to-do lists and worries about the future and replaying awkward moments from the past. Not exactly peaceful.
Right. And instead of getting swept away by those thoughts, identifying with them as me, we simply observe them. We become the witness to our thoughts rather than the thinker.
So it's about creating some distance between ourselves and our thoughts.
Exactly.
That sounds almost like meditation.
Yeah.
But I've always struggled with clearing my mind completely.
Yeah. It's not about forcing your mind to be blank. It's more about shifting your attention from thinking to observing. It's a subtle but profound shift.
Okay, I can see how that could be helpful.
Yeah.
But how do I actually do that?
Yeah.
It still feels a bit abstract.
Well, Tolle offers a few different techniques. One is to simply focus on your breath.
Okay.
Feel the air entering and leaving your body. Notice the sensations. It's an anchor that brings you back to the present moment.
I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
It's like a gentle reminder to step out of the mental whirlwind and reconnect with my body.
Exactly. Another practice is to become aware of your inner body. Instead of getting lost in your thoughts, shift your attention to the sensations within your physical form.
Okay.
Feel the energy that animates your body.
We talked about this earlier, right? About how the inner body can be a portal to the unmanifested.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And by focusing on the inner body, we tap into a deeper dimension of ourselves,
Yeah.
a realm of stillness and peace that's always present beneath the surface of our thoughts and emotions.
You know, it's almost like we have this incredible resource within us, like this portal to a deeper reality.
Yeah.
But we're so caught up in our heads that we forget that it's even there.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why these practices are so crucial. They help us to remember who we truly are.
Okay, so we've got the breath, the inner body.
Mm-hmm.
What are some other portals that Tolle talks about? I remember you mentioning space and silence earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Tolle explains that just as no sound can exist without silence, no form can exist without space.
So even in the midst of like a bustling city, we're surrounded in space. And even when our minds are racing with thoughts, there's silence within.
Exactly. And by becoming aware of that space and that silence, we connect with the unmanifested.
Yeah.
The formless dimension that underlies all of creation.
Okay.
It's a way of tapping into the stillness that's always present beneath the surface of our busy lives.
That's a beautiful concept.
Yeah.
And makes you realize that peace isn't something that we need to seek out in some far-off retreat. It's already here within us and all around us.
And it's accessible in every moment if we know how to tune in.
This is all starting to make sense. All these concepts, presence, the unmanifested, these portals, they're all interconnected, pointing to a deeper reality that's always available to us.
Yes, and it's about recognizing that this deeper reality isn't separate from us.
Yeah.
It's not something that we need to achieve or attain. It's our true nature.
Okay, before we wrap up this section, I want to touch on one more concept that really intrigued me. Conscious death.
Okay.
It sounds a bit intense.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear more about what Tolle means by that.
Yeah, it's a really powerful concept. Tolle explains that true death is not the end of life, but the end of identification with form.
Okay.
It's the dissolution of the ego, the false sense of self that we cling to so tightly.
So it's not about physical death.
Right.
But about dying to who we think we are.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound.
It is. And he describes this conscious death as a portal to a much deeper dimension of being.
It's almost like a graduation.
Yeah.
Stepping into a more expansive reality.
Yes. And he suggests that this conscious death doesn't have to happen at the end of our physical lives. It can happen in moments of deep presence. In those moments when the ego fades away and we're left with pure awareness.
Wow. That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's like we have the potential to experience a glimpse of enlightenment even while we're still here in these physical bodies.
That's exactly what Tolle is pointing to. And he offers these practices as ways to facilitate that shift in consciousness, to help us access the power of the present moment and realize our true nature.
This has been such a rich exploration so far. I'm sure our listener is feeling inspired to delve deeper into these ideas.
I hope so, and I encourage everyone to approach The Power of Now, not just as a book to be read, but as a guide to be lived.
Okay, so we've explored
Yeah.
some pretty profound concepts from The Power of Now, presence, the pain body, the illusion of time,
Right.
portals to the unmanifested, even conscious death.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in,
It is.
to be honest.
Yeah, but what's so brilliant about Tolle's work is that he doesn't leave us hanging with these abstract ideas.
Right?
He offers concrete practices to help us apply them in our daily lives.
Right, because it's one thing to intellectually grasp these concepts, but actually integrating them into our experience is where the real magic happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Right.
So let's dive into some of those practical tools that Tolle provides for accessing the power of now.
Okay, I'm ready. Where do we begin?
Well, we've already touched on a few key practices like watching the thinker, focusing on the breath, and becoming aware of the inner body.
Right.
These are all foundational practices that can really help us cultivate presence and detach from the Eber's grip.
You know, I have to say,
Yeah.
even just hearing you describe those practices, I can already feel a sense of calm washing over me.
Oh, wow.
It's like this little reminder that peace is always available if we just know how to tune in.
That's the beauty of it. It's not about adding more to our already busy lives.
Right.
It's more about shifting our perspective, our way of being in the world.
So it's not about achieving some kind of mystical state, but about coming back to ourselves, to the present moment again and again.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Tolle emphasizes that this is an ongoing practice, not a destination we arrive at. There will be moments when we get swept away by our thoughts, when we lose ourselves in the drama of our lives. But the key is to gently guide ourselves back to presence without judgment or self-criticism.
That's reassuring because I know I'm not always going to get it right.
Mm.
It sounds like it's more about the journey, the continual practice of returning to the now.
Yeah.
Rather than striving for some perfect state of enlightenment.
Precisely. And Tolle offers this beautiful analogy to illustrate this point. He compares the mind to a dog that's been chained up for years.
Okay.
And when you finally release that dog, it's going to run wild for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Barking and jumping and exploring its newfound freedom.
I can see where he's going with this.
The mind is similar. When we first start to practice presence, our thoughts might feel even more chaotic for a time. But with patience and persistence, the mind will eventually settle down like that dog, finding its place in its new environment.
That's a helpful image.
Ugh.
It takes the pressure off of having to control our thoughts.
Yeah.
And instead, it invites us to simply observe them with more compassion and understanding.
Exactly. And that's where the power of acceptance comes in. Tolle talks a lot about surrender.
Okay.
Not as a passive resignation, but as a conscious choice to allow life to unfold as it is without resistance.
So it's about letting go of the need to control everything, to force things to be a certain way.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're not really in control anyway. There are so many factors in life that are beyond our influence.
Right.
And when we try to resist that natural flow of things, we just create unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
You know, I think that's a really important point, especially in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about productivity and self-optimization.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've lost the ability to simply be, to accept what is.
That's a keen observation, and Tolle would likely agree with you.
Yeah.
He encourages us to really question those cultural narratives that tell us we need to be constantly striving, achieving, and accumulating.
Right.
He reminds us that true fulfillment comes not from external accomplishments, but from connecting with the inner source of peace that's always present within us.
This has been such a powerful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on life,
Yeah.
and I'm really excited to explore these practices further.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, the journey of awakening is not a linear path. There will be ups and downs, moments of clarity and moments of confusion. The key is to be gentle with yourself, to trust the process, and to keep coming back to the present moment again and again.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through The Power of Now. It's a book that I know I'll be revisiting for years to come. And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.